I stood frozen before the note taped to the refrigerator door, my duffel bag still slung over my shoulder after 9 months on assignment in Eastern Europe. All memories of top-secret operations in Budapest, Prague, or Warsaw vanished in an instant. On the note was Sophia's blue crayon drawing. She had drawn our house, the front lawn, and stick figures representing our family. But what sent chills down my spine was the black sedan parked across the street. The car's windows were painted blood red. "Daddy!" Sophia rushed to hug my legs. 8 years old, her hair disheveled, her face beaming with joy. "Daddy's home!" I knelt down and hugged her tightly, but my eyes remained fixed on the drawing. "What's this drawing about, dear?" Sophia replied naturally. "That car comes every Tuesday. Mom says it's nothing, but I see the man in the car staring at our house." A chill ran down my spine. I'm Ryan Blackwood, a military intelligence major, a counterintelligence and cyber warfare expert with 15 years of experience. And now, I've just realized my 8-year-old daughter has far better observational skills than many professionally trained soldiers. "Where's Mom?" "Upstairs. She's been on the phone since yesterday." I hurried up the stairs. A feeling of unease crept into my heart. Something was wrong. This house wasn't the same anymore. Not the kind of unfamiliarity after months of absence, but the feeling that someone else had entered our lives, silently leaving their mark everywhere. Melissa stood in the bedroom, her back to the door, the phone pressed to her ear. "I told him to come home earlier than planned. We need—" She startled and turned around. Her face was noticeably pale. "I'll call back later." "Who is it for?" "Just a client at the company." Melissa forced a smile. "A bit of a crisis." But I saw the signs of deception immediately. She unconsciously touched her neck, avoided my gaze, and took half a step back. "Welcome home." I've interrogated foreign spies who are far more adept at lying than this. "Mel, who's watching our house?" She paused. "What do you mean?" "Sophia drew a black car. It appears every Tuesday." "You know what?" Melissa laughed, but the sound was stiff and prepared. "She's just imagining things. You know how much Sophia loves to make things up." I walked to the window, my gaze sweeping across the peaceful, suburban neighborhood of Virginia. Neatly manicured lawns, housewives' SUVs. The Hendersons across the street were washing their familiar minivan. There was no black sedan, but my gut feeling was still screaming. "You're tired," Melissa said softly. "Go take a shower. I'll make dinner." I nodded, but my mind was already analyzing. In the bathroom, I reviewed all the changes I'd noticed in just a few hours since returning. The garage door code had been changed. The security system had gaps in its recording data. Melissa kept hiding her phone. And there was another detail. A strange name. "Jake, who is Uncle Theo?" My son lifted his head from his plate of spaghetti. "Mom's friend. He's really funny. He bought me a new game." I glanced at the Xbox controller on the kitchen counter. A high-end one, costing nearly $300. "He's so kind. He often comes over when Dad's away. He helps Mom fix things." "Fix what?" Melissa dropped her fork onto the table. "Jake, eat up." "He fixes the garage door," Sophia chimed in. "He knows about computers, too. He's been in Dad's study." The atmosphere instantly froze. My office contains military encryption equipment, secure hard drives, and authentication tokens for the intelligence network. No civilians are allowed in there. "Jake, Sophia, go watch TV." The children quickly left the dining table. I waited until the cartoons started playing in the living room before turning to Melissa. "Who is Theo?" "Just a colleague helping me with a few things." "And he needed to come into your office to help?" "The kids are exaggerating. He was just helping move some boxes." Each answer reeked of deception. But years of working in a hostile environment had taught me one thing: impatience ruins everything. That night, while Melissa was fast asleep, I remotely accessed the home security system. The gaps in the video data weren't random. They'd appeared every Tuesday for the past 4 months. Professional. Deliberate. I checked the street camera. The black Mercedes appeared exactly where Sophia had drawn it. The license plate was partially obscured. The car always arrived at 2:47 p.m., parked for exactly 43 minutes, then left. Everything matched Melissa's schedule at home. I looked up the license plate in the military database. The owner was Transcendence Holdings, LLC, a shell company registered in Delaware 6 months prior. No business address, no employees, no real trace. My hands began to tremble. In 15 years of counterintelligence, I'd seen this pattern dozens of times. Foreign agents set up front companies, approach their targets through relatives, and create a perfect disguise. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a recruitment operation, and my wife is either the perfect victim or a willing accomplice. For the next 3 days, I played the role of the perfect husband returning from a mission, taking the kids to school, setting up dinner with Melissa, smiling and talking as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I secretly turned my own house into a surveillance center. Microphones in the kitchen, living room, and garage, tiny cameras in the hallway, GPS tracker in Melissa's car, keylogger in her laptop. If Theo really was what I suspected, he would be exposed. And Tuesday arrived. The sky was gray, and a drizzle covered the suburbs. I told Melissa I had to go to Quantico for a medical checkup after my mission. Instead, I parked 3 blocks from home and activated the full surveillance system on my phone. 2:43. The black Mercedes appeared. 4 minutes later, a man walked to my door. Tall, a solid build, neatly cut black hair. Every movement was precise, cold, like a highly trained agent. Melissa opened the door before he even knocked. "You're early." "The streets are quiet." His voice had a well-disguised Mandarin accent. "Where are the kids?" "Jake went to soccer practice. Sophia is at a friend's until 5 o'clock. "Good. We have work to do." I switched to the listening system inside. "I'm worried Ryan is getting suspicious." "What did he ask?" "About the car. About you." Silence for a few seconds. Then Theo's voice lowered. "Melissa, your husband works in a field that's valuable to many parties. Your children provide the perfect cover. I don't want to involve the children. They weren't dragged in. They just were present." I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Then Theo continued. "The photos of your husband's office are very useful. The code to unlock the laptop in the safe is too. I don't know what he used them for, but you still took the money." Money. I immediately checked our joint bank account. Transfers from Transcendence Holdings. $15,000 over 4 months, split up to avoid the federal financial alert system. Melissa wasn't a victim. She was paid intelligence asset. At that moment, my anger flared like napalm. But I remained still, because the soldier in me understood. To completely destroy the enemy, I needed sufficient evidence, and I would take it all. From inside the car, parked hidden behind the row of maple trees at the end of the street, I continued to listen to every word through my noise-canceling headphones. Inside my house. In the kitchen where Sophia used to color and Jake used to do his math homework. A foreign agent was manipulating my wife like a pawn on an international intelligence chessboard. "Does Ryan have any further suspicions?" Theo asked. Melissa leaned against the kitchen counter, her hands clasped tightly together. I could hear her ragged breathing through the microphone hidden under the dining table. "He asked about the office, asked why he'd been there before." "What did you say?" "I said I was just moving boxes." Not convincing enough. Theo's voice remained chillingly calm. You need to be more careful from now on. Ryan Blackwood isn't the kind of man you can fool." Messia was silent for a few seconds, then whispered, "I don't want to do it anymore." I froze. On the other end of the line, Theo gave a weak laugh. "It's too late. I just thought it was just schedule information. I didn't know it was this serious. You knew your husband worked for the military." "I needed money." Melissa almost burst into tears. "Ryan was away for months at a time. Everything in the house fell on my shoulders. And I helped you." He stepped closer. His voice softened, almost hypnotic. "I helped fix the garage, paid your children's tuition, helped you feel less alone. I didn't betray my country." "No," he chuckled softly. "You only open the door for those who know how to take advantage of it." My stomach churned. That was exactly the MSS recruitment technique. No coercion, no threats from the start. They make the target feel understood, helped, then gradually drag them down into the abyss. "What do I do now?" Melissa asked. "As usual. Tonight, retrieve the documents from Ryan's briefcase, especially the new work schedule." "I can't." "You can." Theo's voice suddenly turned cold. "If Ryan knew you'd been taking money for months, do you think he'd forgive you?" Melissa didn't answer. "We protect our assets, Melissa. Don't make things unpleasant." I understood exactly what that meant. A threat. Not direct, but enough to instill fear. I muted the sound for a few seconds, leaning back in my seat. Rain pattered on the windshield. My hand gripped the Glock in the glove compartment so tightly it ached. I'd faced arms dealers in Serbia, extremists in Poland, survived ambushes on the Ukrainian border. But never had I felt so breathless. Because the most dangerous battlefield is your own home. That night, I acted as if nothing had happened. Melissa cooked pasta. Sophia told stories about school. Jake rambled on about the weekend's soccer game. A normal family. At least, that's how it seemed from the outside. But every time Melissa bent down to get something in the kitchen, I remembered her voice through the eavesdropping device. "I need money." No, she needed to feel noticed, to be cared for. And someone like Theo had seen that void long before I realized it. After dinner, I went to my office. I deliberately left a stack of confidential documents in my briefcase. False information, false deployment schedule, false unit name, a perfect trap. 1:12 a.m. Melissa got out of bed. I lay still, breathing evenly as if I were fast asleep. Soft footsteps echoed down the stairs. I opened the camera app on my phone. The screen showed the garage. Melissa stood under the dim yellow light, wearing a loose sweater, her hair hastily tied back. She opened my briefcase with trembling hands. Then she took out her phone and photographed each page. Click, click, click. Each sound was like a knife plunging deep into my heart. The woman who stood beside me at my wedding is now stealing military documents for foreign intelligence. As Melissa turned away, her eyes glanced at the fake security camera in the corner. She didn't know that the real camera was hidden in the shadows above the garage ceiling, and everything had been recorded. The next morning, I drove straight to the FBI office. The basement security briefing room reeked of cold coffee and printed paper. Colonel Sarah Brennan stood beside the electronic whiteboard, her face grim. Beside her was FBI agent Torres. I tossed the USB drive containing the recording onto the desk. "Enough," I said. "Let's end this." Torres opened the video. The room fell silent as images of Melissa photographing the documents appeared. "My God," Brennan muttered. "I want to arrest both of them today." Torres crossed his arms. "Ryan, we're still tracking the network behind it. If we end it too soon, other links will disappear." "I don't care. This could be the biggest intelligence operation in years." "I told you. I looked him straight in the eye. My daughter is talking to a foreign agent in my own kitchen. No one responded, because everyone understood. This was no longer simply a counter-espionage operation. It had become a personal matter. Torres sighed. If we proceed with the arrest, your life will change completely. It changed the moment Melissa received the first payment. Bernanda stared at me for a long time. What are you going to do after this is over? I was silent for a few seconds. Then I slowly replied, I will make anyone who thinks about betraying this country fear. The arrest operation was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The same time, the same black Mercedes, the same quiet street where neighbors still thought the Blackwood family was just an ordinary military family. The sky that day was overcast, as if a storm was brewing. From inside the surveillance vehicle parked 2 blocks from the house, I watched the monitor mounted on the dashboard. FBI agents were taking their positions via intercom. Team Alpha ready. Team Bravo take their positions behind. Camera signal stable. I sat still, my eyes fixed on the image of my house. My house used to be the safest place for me. Now it resembled the scene of a betrayal that had lasted for months. 3:41 p.m. A Mercedes appeared at the end of the street. It glided slowly across the lush green lawns and stopped at its usual spot across the road. Chen Wei stepped out of the car. Today he wore a dark coat, his face calm, as if he were just visiting a friend. No one looking at him would think this was a high-ranking intelligence officer of the MSS, China's notorious intelligence agency. Melissa opened the door before he could knock. She pulled him inside quickly, her eyes filled with tension. Both targets have entered the house. A voice echoed through the earpiece. Torres asked me one last time. Confirmed deployment? I looked at the screen. Melissa was talking to Chen in the kitchen. Her hands gripped the coffee cup so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I remembered our wedding day. Melissa, in her white dress, stood in the summer sun, smiling at me as if only the two of us existed in the world. I once believed I would grow old with that woman. I once believed she would always be my refuge after every battle. But it turned out, the one who stabbed me the deepest was the very person who slept beside me every night. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. Deploy! Everything exploded immediately. The front door was blown open. The deafening sound of stun grenades echoed throughout the house. FBI! Everyone lie down! Melissa screamed. Chen reacted instantly, lunging inside his jacket. But the tactical team was even faster. An agent slammed into him, sending him tumbling to the kitchen floor. The handgun slid under the dining table. Target secured. Safe. Second floor checked. The entire operation was over in less than 90 seconds. I stepped out of the surveillance vehicle as the rain began to intensify. Melissa was led out handcuffed. Her hair was disheveled, mascara smeared across her pale face. When she saw me, she froze. Ryan. Her voice trembled with disbelief. You called the FBI? I stood still in the rain. I didn't answer, because there was nothing left for us to say at this moment. Chen was different. He was frighteningly calm. Even with his hands clasped behind his back, he looked at me with a cold, calculating gaze. Then he nodded slightly. A very slight nod. An acknowledgement between two men who understood the game of intelligence. He knew this day would come sooner or later. Only Melissa never understood what she was truly involved in. The FBI searched the house for hours. They found cash hidden in a drawer, a burner phone, a USB drive containing classified documents, hundreds of photos taken from my laptop, and payment lists from shell companies. Melissa sat in the agent's car, trembling as she watched everything being carried out like a nightmare unfolding. Meanwhile, the television crew began to pull down the street. Red and green lights reflected across the peaceful suburbs. Neighbors gathered under their porches, whispering amongst themselves. No one understood what was happening. No one knew that the house had just been the center of an international spy network. 3 days later, I met Melissa at the Federal Detention Center. Bulletproof glass separated us into two completely different worlds. Melissa wore a loose, orange prison uniform. Her face was gaunt. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. She held the phone tremblingly. "Ryan, please." I sat down opposite her, cold, distant. "You have to understand me." "Understand what?" "I didn't think things would turn out like this." I placed the file on the table. Photographs of documents, audio recordings, transaction history. Each piece of evidence was neatly arranged like the final knife, ending all illusions. "This wasn't an accident, Melissa." She burst into tears. "He lied to me. He said he only needed a little information." "And you believed him?" "I was lonely." "And what about you?" I leaned closer to the glass. "I spent 9 months in Eastern Europe protecting this country. Meanwhile, you sold military information for $15,000. I didn't commit treason. You let a foreign intelligence officer into your house." Melissa fell silent. I continued, my voice low and cold. "You let him get close to my daughter." Tears streamed down her face. "I never wanted to harm the children." "But you did." The air between us was thick with pain. Finally, Melissa whispered, "Are you really going to let me go to jail?" I looked at the woman before me for a long time. The woman who used to be my whole world. Now it was just a part of the counterintelligence file. "I didn't put you in jail," I said slowly. "You walked right into it the day you received the money." Melissa burst into tears. "And me?" I felt nothing anymore. The federal trial began nearly 2 months later. Washington, D.C. entered winter, the cold winds lashing the gray stone steps of the federal courthouse as if to cut through flesh. Reporters crowded the main entrance, cameras lined up in rows. The suburban window case had become a national focus. A spy network embedded within the families of American military personnel, an intelligence major betrayed by his own wife, and a Chinese MSS officer operating for 2 years on American soil. News dominated every television channel, but to me, all that remained was the ashes of a marriage. I walked into the courtroom in my neat military uniform. The back row was packed with people: lawyers, FBI agents, defense officials, reporters, and Melissa's family. Her mother burst into tears the moment she saw me. Her father turned his face away. I understand that feeling. They didn't know whether to hate me or to hate their own daughter. Melissa was led in last. The sound of shackles echoed softly in the silent room. I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who had always appeared so perfect in elegant dresses was now so thin that her cheeks were sunken. Her eyes had lost their former confidence. When Melissa saw me, her lips moved slightly. "Ryan." I didn't answer. At the table opposite, Chen Wei remained as calm as a stone statue, emotionless, fearless. He sat upright, his cold eyes observing everything as if this were just another failed mission in his decades-long intelligence career. The federal prosecutor stood up and began the trial with a statement that silenced the entire room. "This is not just treason." He placed his hand on the thick file. "This is evidence that foreign intelligence is turning American military families into battlefields." I testified for 6 hours. Each recording was played back in court. Melissa's voice boomed through the loudspeaker. "Ryan has a new deployment schedule next week. I can get more photos from the office. The kids have no suspicions." Each sentence was like a hammer blow to the room. Melissa lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. But the jury showed no mercy. Because the evidence was too clear, the photos she took of the documents, the bank transfer records, the secret meetings every Tuesday, there was no turning back. Then it was Chen Wei's turn. He refused to cooperate, refused to answer, refused to acknowledge his true identity. Until the FBI released the decrypted data from the laptop seized at his hotel. The target list, the military family, the deployment information, the classified documents. And the name of the operation? Suburban Window. The courtroom fell silent, filled with horrified murmurs. It turned out Melissa wasn't the only case. Chen had approached dozens of military wives across America, one by one. Women lonely because their husbands were constantly deployed, families under financial pressure, people who, with just the right amount of attention, could be dragged down into the abyss. Sentencing took place on a snow-covered morning. Melissa trembled as she stood before the dock. "Defendant Melissa Blackwood," the judge said in a cold, deep voice. "The court sentences her to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit espionage and disclosing classified information." Melissa burst into tears immediately. Her mother screamed in the back seat. And Chen Wei. Life imprisonment without parole. He merely closed his eyes slightly. No reaction. Not angry. Just silent, as if she had accepted this outcome long ago. As the agent led Melissa past me, she suddenly stopped. "Ryan," her voice choked. "There was a time when I truly loved you." I looked at her for a long time. Then I slowly replied, "I loved you too." That was the last time we spoke to each other as husband and wife. Outside the courthouse, the snow was falling heavily. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed incessantly. "Major Blackwood, do you think the sentence is too harsh? Have you forgiven your wife? Do you consider her a traitor?" I paused on the icy stone steps. The winter wind whipped my uniform. Then I looked directly into the dozens of lenses in front of me. "Some mistakes can be rectified," I said slowly, "but some betrayals destroy everything forever." No one said anything more, because everyone understood. This was no longer just a family story. This was a warning. That night, I returned to my empty house. Jake had moved in with his grandparents after the arrest. Sophia kept asking when her mother would be home. I walked into the dark living room, removed my rank insignia, and placed it on the table. Silence enveloped everything. There was no more Melissa's laughter, no more familiar cologne. Only a suffocatingly cold emptiness remained. On the refrigerator, Sophia's drawing was still there. A family of 4 standing in front of a blue house. But this time, there was no longer a black car. I stood silently for a long time in front of the drawing. Then, for the first time in months, I burst into tears. 6 months after the trial, I received a new assignment at the Pentagon. Head of the task force against exploiting military families. A lengthy title for a much simpler job. Find people like Chen Wei before they destroy any more families. I moved to a small house near Quantico with Jake and Sophia. No more suburban villa, no more perfect lawn or weekend neighborhood parties. Just the 3 of us trying to learn to live. Jake had changed the most. He was only 11, but his eyes were much more mature than his age. He was quiet, often sitting for hours by the window or reading military history books, as if trying to force himself to grow up quickly. Sophia was different. She was still too young to fully understand. Every night before bed, Sophia would ask the same question. "Do you miss us, Mommy?" And each time, it took me a few seconds to answer. "Yes, sweetheart, I miss you." "Then why don't you come home?" I never found a truly suitable answer for an 8-year-old. How could I explain that the mother she loved had sold national secrets to foreign intelligence? How could I tell her that greed and loneliness could turn a person into a stranger? So I just held Sophia close and said, "I made a huge mistake." My new job meant I practically lived in the office. The walls of the meeting room were covered with photos of suspects, communication diagrams, intelligence files, and candid shots of secret meetings in parking lots, cafes, or peaceful suburbs. Every time I look at them, I see Melissa. I see the black Mercedes parked in front of the house. I see Sophia holding a box of crayons standing by the window. One November morning, I was assigned to Norfolk to investigate a new sign of intrusion. 3 naval families had unusual connections with an organization that consults international investments. Too familiar. Too similar. I walked into the meeting room at the naval base with a thick file in my hand. More than 30 military wives sat below. Many were very young, tired, lonely, and vulnerable. I looked at them for a long time before beginning. Foreign intelligence agencies don't approach you like in the movies. The room fell silent. They don't wear black suits or introduce themselves as spies. I turned on the projector screen. Pictures of dapper men appeared. Businessmen, journalists, technology experts, financial advisors. They'll appear as people ready to listen to you. A few women exchanged glances. They know your husbands are often away. They know the financial pressures that exhaust many people. They know how loneliness can lead people to make wrong choices. The atmosphere in the room grew heavier. They'll offer help. I changed the slide. The money transfers appeared. $500, $1,200, $3,000. Initially, it was just dinner money, car repairs, children's school fees. I paused for a few seconds. Then one day they'll ask about your husband's assignment schedule. No one said anything, because everyone understood this was far more serious than they thought. A young woman in the 3rd row slowly raised her hand. What if... I've already given the information. I looked at her. Her blonde hair was hastily tied back. Her wedding ring was constantly twirling on her finger. Anxious, panicked, fearfully familiar. What's your name? Jennifer Walsh. Where does your husband serve? 10th Special Forces Group. My heart sank slightly. Special Forces. The perfect target for recruitment campaigns. I need to speak with you privately after the meeting. Jennifer's face instantly turned pale. 2 hours later, she sat across from me in the FBI interrogation room. Her hands trembled so much she could barely hold a glass of water. He said he was a journalist, Jennifer choked out. He only asked a few questions about military life. And then what? He paid me. How much? $500 the first time, then more. I closed my eyes for a few seconds. Exactly like Melissa. Everything was exactly the same. Did he ask for photos? Jennifer nodded, tears beginning to fall. I sent some pictures. My husband's desk, some papers. Do you have a military laptop? She burst into tears. I didn't know this was so serious. I looked at the woman in front of me for a long time. If Melissa had stopped at this point, if she had confessed from the beginning, perhaps things would have been different. Jennifer, I said slowly, listen to me carefully. She looked up. You still have a chance to make amends. That night, the FBI arrested the man posing as a journalist. His real name was Lu Feng, another intelligence officer, another network, a new version of the suburban window. As I walked out of FBI headquarters near midnight, it was raining heavily in Norfolk. I stood under the eaves, lit a cigarette, and watched the raindrops fall on the street, reflecting the streetlights. Torres came up beside me. Jennifer will receive leniency for voluntarily cooperating. Good. She was lucky to meet you before things went too far. I gave a wry smile. Melissa had a similar opportunity. Torres was silent for a few seconds before asking, Do you still think about her? I looked at the white curtain of rain outside. For a long time. I think about her every day. Do you still love her? I didn't answer immediately. because that question was harder than any interrogation I'd ever been through. Finally, I just whispered, "I remember the woman she used to be." Then I put out my cigarette and went back to work, because somewhere out there, another family was being targeted. The following spring, the suburban window case was officially included in the U.S. military's counterintelligence training program. My name appeared in classified reports, high-level security training sessions, and strategic meetings at the Pentagon. Some called me a hero. Others whispered that I was too cruel to my own wife. I didn't care anymore. After all that remained in me was duty, and my 2 children. Late one evening, as I was reviewing files at my office in Quantico, the phone suddenly rang. A call from Alderson Federal Prison. I paused for a few seconds before answering. "Ryan." Melissa's voice was so soft it almost faded into the phone's static. It had been almost a year since we last spoke. "What is it?" "I just wanted to hear your voice." I leaned back in my chair, my eyes fixed on the thick stacks of files in front of me. Outside, it was raining. It was raining again. "How are the kids?" "Jake's grown taller. Sophia still loves to draw." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Melissa started crying. "I miss them." I closed my eyes. Images of her at home flashed through my mind, laughing in the sunny kitchen, hugging Sophia at the school gate, arguing with Jake because he'd played video games past his all-time. It all seemed to belong to a different life. "Ryan," Melissa's voice choked. "If I had never met Chen." "But you did." My words cut through any remaining illusions. A faint sob trembled on the other end. "Did you ever think things could have been different?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you save me?" I gave a weak, weary laugh. "I tried to save you from the beginning, Melissa," I said slowly. "It's just that you chose to side with him." She cried louder. "I was scared." I was scared too. I stood up and walked to the window. I was scared every time Jake asked why his mother was a criminal. I'm afraid that every time Sophia draws, she'll miss a family member. I'm afraid that one day you too will think betrayal is something that can be easily forgiven. Melissa was completely silent. Finally, she softly asked, "Do you hate me?" I looked at the rain outside for a long time. Then I honestly answered, "No." The other end of the line choked up. "But I will never forgive you." The call ended in silence. I stood alone in the dark office for a long time afterward. Not relieved, not in pain, just empty. A few weeks later, Jake proactively asked to move in with me permanently. On the first night back home, he helped me cook in the kitchen where Melissa used to receive money from Chen. "Dad?" "Yes. If someone ever tries to harm Sophia, I'll protect her." I looked at my son, 12 years old, but his eyes already held the look of an adult who had experienced war. "You don't need to be a hero, Jake. But I want to be someone who won't let my family be hurt again." My heart ached. That was my own thought, many years ago. That night, Sophia ran into my study with her crayon box. "Daddy, I finished my drawing." She climbed onto my lap, holding out the drawing that still smelled of fresh crayons. This time, the 3 of us were standing in front of a house under a sunny sky. Jake was smiling brightly. Sophia held my hand, and in the corner of the drawing, a woman in the distance beyond the fence, Melissa, tiny, faded, but still there. "Did you draw Mom?" I asked softly. Sophia nodded. "Mom isn't home, but she's still Mom." That innocent statement made my chest ache. Children always love in the simplest way. No treason, no espionage, no greed or betrayal, just remembrance and affection. I stroked her hair. That's a beautiful painting. Sophia smiled and ran off to sleep. I sat alone in front of the painting for a long time. Perhaps that was the hardest thing for me. Not catching spies, not confronting foreign intelligence networks, but learning how to raise two children who still loved their mother, even though I was the one who sent her to prison. At midnight, the internal encrypted phone rang. Major Blackwood. The voice on the other end was serious. We've just discovered a new network in San Diego. I closed my eyes. Another network. Another family's being targeted. Is there MSS evidence? Yes, and this time it's on a larger scale than Suburban Window. I stood up and put on my coat. Prepare the files. I'm coming right away. After hanging up, I walked past the children's room. Jake was asleep with a military history book on his chest. Sophia clutched her crayon box to her chest like a treasure. I quietly closed the door. Then I walked down the stairs in the darkness. Outside, thousands of city lights still shone. Somewhere among them, another lonely wife was being approached with seemingly harmless offers, and children were inadvertently seeing something they shouldn't have seen. And now, I am the one who will hunt down all those behind it. Because I have learned one thing after all my losses. Trust, once shattered, will never be whole again. Only the consequences remain. 3 months later, the San Diego operation was officially codenamed Glass Harbor. Larger, more sophisticated, and more dangerous than anything I'd faced since Suburban Window. Unlike Chen Wei, this network wasn't just targeting military wives. They were reaching out to the children, siblings, and even close friends of naval and special forces officers. Targets were exploited through dating apps, cryptocurrency investments, international scholarships, and fake non-profit organizations. A war without gunfire. But the consequences were enough to destroy national security. I arrived in San Diego one misty morning. The temporary command center was located in the basement of the North Island Naval Base. Screens covered the walls, communication map, satellite imagery, suspect profiles. The sound of keyboards echoed incessantly in the cold white light. Torres tossed me a file. You should look at this first. I opened it. The first page was a photo of a woman in her 30s, brown hair, a gentle smile, wearing a wedding ring. Name, Amanda Reeves. Her husband is the commander of a Virginia-class nuclear submarine. Voluntarily cooperating? I asked. Torres shook his head. No, she approached them proactively. I looked up. They paid Amanda over $400,000 a year. The atmosphere in the room became tense. 400,000. This was no longer a small bribe. This was real high-level espionage. Even worse. Torres lowered his voice. Amanda has recruited 2 more military wives. I closed the file slowly. Things were evolving. After Suburban Window, MSS had learned that greed spreads faster than any recruitment campaign. That evening, I returned to my temporary security apartment near the coast. Jake video called just as I was taking off my coat. Dad! His face appeared on the phone screen. Behind him, Sophia was running around the living room with crayons. I scored a goal today. Jake smiled proudly. Great job. Dad, when are you coming home? I looked at the clock. 2 a.m. There were still dozens of unread files on the desk. Soon. Jake was silent for a few seconds, then asked softly, Are you hunting spies again, Dad? Something like that. Be careful, Dad. My chest tightened slightly. A 12-year-old shouldn't be saying that to their father. I'm always careful. I don't want to lose anyone else. The words plunged the room into silence. Sophia suddenly chimed in, looking at the screen. Daddy! I drew you! She held up her scribbled drawing. I was in military uniform, standing before a giant black monster with dozens of red eyes. What is that? The evil monster, Sophia replied seriously. You're defeating it. I smiled, but my heart felt cold. Because she didn't know. She had just accurately depicted my feelings about this war. 2 days later, the first raid took place. The target was a seaside villa in La Jolla. Amanda Reeves was hosting a dinner party with 3 naval officers and a Singaporean tech investor. A fake name, a fake passport, a high-ranking MSS officer in reality. I stood in the command vehicle, my eyes glued to the drone screen. Amanda was smiling broadly with a glass of red wine, just like Melissa used to be. No, I immediately dismissed that thought. Melissa never started like this. Amanda was different. She knew exactly what she was doing. Alpha Team, take your positions. Bravo Team, cover the rear. I pressed the communication button. Don't let any devices leave the house. Understood. 10 seconds later. The villa's glass door shattered. A deafening scream. FBI, everyone lie down! Agents stormed in like a whirlwind. Amanda reacted incredibly quickly, lunging towards the laptop on the table. I immediately understood her intention, to erase the data. Blocker! An agent slammed Amanda to the floor just before she could reach the keyboard. The man with the Singapore passport drew his gun. The sound of gunfire filled the air. The room descended into chaos. The tactical team returned fire almost simultaneously. The spy collapsed onto the pristine white marble floor. Blood stained the luxurious yellow lights of the million-dollar mansion. It all ended in less than 3 minutes. But when I stepped into the scene, I knew this was just the beginning. On Amanda's laptop screen was a list of hundreds of names: military families, defense scientists, nuclear engineers, test pilots, and in the right corner of the screen, a folder named Next Generation Targets. I opened it. My heart almost stopped. Inside were pictures of children of U.S. military officers. There were even school schedules, schools, extracurricular activities, nanny information. They were expanding their target to the next generation. Torres walked up behind me. Oh my God. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I said slowly, no. My voice was so cold it felt alien to myself. This time I will burn down their entire network.